What's up, tubers? It's Tony, and today I'm going to show you how to easily set your Chevy 4.3 liter V6 vortec engine to top dead center on the compression stroke for the number one cylinder. The number one cylinder. I'm also going to show you how to properly install a new distributor on this engine. So for those of you who are having difficulties getting your new distributor to seat correctly, after today's video, you're going to be able to do it with no problems. I'm going to take my time with today's video. I will not rush. I'm going to treat everyone listening and watching today's video like layman's, as if you know nothing about cars. Before you start working on such a task, disconnect the black cable from your battery. It's safer. A lot of folks will often ask me, how come you say that in all your videos, or many of your videos? The reason is, folks, this is a live electrical connector and the battery is still hooked up. If I accidentally touch it against the wrong piece of metal, I can screw up the vehicle's computer, or even worse, I can burn the computer completely up, and then you're really in trouble. So it's safer just to disconnect the black cable, okay? Although the video will be a little lengthy, guys, because I do have a lot of information to cover, we're going to cover right quick all the tools you need to do the job correctly. You're going to need a 3/8 ratchet, short driver, and a spark plug socket. You're going to need to locate the number one spark plug hole. This is the front of the engine. This is the back of the engine. You're going to need to remove that spark plug wire and that spark plug. And I want to point out something to you guys while I'm there. See this so much. When you go to remove your spark plug wire, do not pull it here, guys. Grab it by the boot with a pair of pliers, needle nose pliers, or get yourself a spark plug socket boot tool to remove these safely, okay? I see a lot of these rip because people just grab it right here. The next tool you're going to need is a 16 millimeter 1/2 inch socket, short driver, and ratchet, as at some point in time you're going to need to spin the crankshaft pulley around 2 or 3 times in order to set the engine to top dead center, okay? We'll come back to that eventually. You are also going to need, I'm going to do with my tools here, you're going to need a 1/4 inch ratchet and a Torx T15 screw remover. That's a trip to Harbor Freight for those of you that don't have such tools, as you are going to need to remove the 2 retaining screws that hold the distributor's cap in place, okay? So the next thing you will need to do is, once you remove the spark plug wire and spark plug from the number one spark plug hole, you're ready to take the distributor's cap off. The distributor is numbered, guys. It has C for coil, 642513 written on it already. You can remove the wires on the passenger side or the driver's side. I usually just remove the wires on the driver's side because there are only 3. If you're not familiar with where wires go, before you remove these wires, write the number 5 here, number 1, and number 3, so you know where the wires go back to. Otherwise, if you mix the wires up, you're going to have a misfire. So once you remove the wires, you can carefully place the cap to the side, and then your distributor will sit in there like that. It has you'll need a 10 millimeter socket or wrench to remove the 10 millimeter bolt that holds the distributor in place. There is an electrical connector back here. Pull up on the tab and you can pull the electrical connector away, okay? So let's talk about top dead center, folks. How do we go about setting the engine to top dead center? There are a number of different methods that people use to accomplish this task. Some people will take a screwdriver, and in that hole, number one hole where you remove the spark plug wire and spark plug, they will stick a screwdriver down in that hole. I'm not a fan of that. Some people will stick tissue down in there, hoping that air will eventually blow that tissue out to tell them that they're at top dead center. I definitely wouldn't do that. Some folks will use an old coat hanger to stick down into that hole. I'll use this if I don't have anything. want to point out something, that finding top dead center can be difficult sometimes when you're by yourself, because you have to spin the crank over and then you have to reach around to this hole and pay attention to when whatever you're sticking in the hole goes up or down and up or down. Well, I'm going to tell you what I use, guys. I use the top dead center whistle, Amazon, Harbor Freight, local auto parts store. It's really reliable and has never let me down. And what I basically do is I go to the number one hole where I remove that spark plug wire and spark plug, carefully thread it in there, guys. Get a flashlight so you see what you're doing. Screw it in there until it screws in and stops. Then you're done. You're just basically listening for the whistle part of it, okay? So, what do they mean when they say find top dead center on the compression stroke for the number one cylinder, okay? Inside of this spark plug hole, there's a piston behind the spark plug in a chamber. And what happens is when they stick screwdrivers or whatever they stick down in that hole, a piston, as you're spinning the crank over, this piston goes up and then drops down, goes up and then drops down a little bit. And what you really want is you want that piston to come all the way up to the top, pushing out all the air if you're using a top dead center whistle or your screwdriver or your coat hanger wire or whatever. You really want that piston to come back up behind the spark plug hole, and it'll be at its highest point. That's top dead center. Now, how do you know you've reached top dead center, guys? Well, if you're using the top dead center whistle, I'm just going to use that as an example. This is the crank pulley. There's your 16 millimeter half-inch bolt that you're going to spin clockwise. There are two grooves made on the crank pulley. There's a first groove and a second groove. And then there is a timing cover mark. There's one down here on the engine. Don't worry about this one. Concentrate on the one that I'm going to show you when I go out to the vehicle today. How do you know which mark is the first and which is the second? The first groove or mark has a mark behind it going counterclockwise. The second groove or mark has nothing behind it, okay? So with the top dead center whistle, you're going to spin the crank over 2 or 3 times. These two marks will spin around, and if you've done this correctly, as you come around with this mark, when it gets back to where it is now, it will start whistling somewhere over here, and it should stop whistling just as you line it up. If you find that it whistled well beyond that, go around again. That's why you're going to go around 2 or 3 times, sometimes to find top dead center, okay? And how do you know that this is correct? Well, as you're spinning the crank, this gear is spinning and the top of the rotor is spinning. So when you're done, your rotor should be pointing just like this, okay? So it brings me to a very good point that I want to point out. When folks say, set the engine to top dead center on the compression stroke for the number one cylinder, they don't mean point the rotor down here, folks. In their videos, they should be explaining it to you a little bit more clearly. They want you to point that rotor to the number one position on the distributor or the cap, okay? So this is set to top dead center, okay? The distributor is set to top dead center. Let's pretend this is how your distributor sits in there. Let's pretend we can turn the engine around, okay? This is the number 5 spark plug wire, number 1, number 3. If I were to remove that cap, where is that pointer pointing at? It's pointing to the number 1 position on the cap or the distributor, okay? So you can make a mark down here if you want to. If you've done this correctly, you're at top dead center, okay? And then you can go ahead and remove your 10 millimeter clamp bolt, disconnect your electrical connector, and you can go ahead and pull your distributor out. That's how you verify it. Your timing marks should be lined up. Your pointer should be pointing at the number 1 position on the cap or the distributor, not down here. So don't turn the distributor way down there like that, okay? You want the distributor pointed towards the number 1 on the cap, because this is how your distributor sits in there. So right quick, let me run out to the vehicle. I'm going to show you the timing marks, okay? I'm going to show you the marks on the engine timing cover, okay? And I'm going to show you the crank pulley. I'm going to show you your spark plug holes on these side. On the passenger side, I'm going to show you the cap as well. Again, I'm going to treat everyone as if you know nothing about cars. That way I don't miss anything. So hold tight, guys. Okay, folks, I'm facing the engine. There's your crank pulley right there. There's your 10mm bolt that you're going to spin the crank pulley clockwise. There is your your second mark on the crank pulley. Notice there's nothing back here. So go this way, and there is your first mark. There is the timing cover that you're going to line the second mark up with. There's another mark sort of like this down there, but don't worry about it. Make sure you line the second mark up with that timing cover mark, okay? There is your, I'm on the driver's side. There's the number 1 spark plug hole. We're going to remove your spark plug wire and that spark plug, and that's where you're going to insert either your screwdriver, hanger wire, or your top dead center whistle. Your other spark plug holes and wires are back there. I'm on the passenger side. Spark plug wire and hole, spark plug wire and hole, spark plug wire and hole. Okay, folks, there's your distributor and the wires that are attached to it. You can see what folks do. They write numbers on it, and even though the cap has numbers on it already, folks still make dots, etc., so that they can get this right. C for coil, follow that wire, and it comes all the way back here, okay? The rest of the wires go down to their respective spark plug holes. Some folks will remove the plenum so that they have more room to install the new distributor, but don't worry, you don't need to remove the plenum, because I'm going to show you an easy trick of how to put your distributor in, okay? There is your distributor cap retaining bolt right there. There's another one back there. And you want to make sure that that hold down clamp is seated correctly. If it's not, do not try and screw it in, guys, because it is wrong, okay? So, just want to make sure you understood that. Let me come back and revisit this. Timing or crank pulley. Second notch. First notch. You're going to line the second notch up with that timing cover mark. Okay, folks, so if you've done everything correctly to set the engine to top dead center, regardless of what method you use, the screwdriver in that hole, coat hanger wire, or top dead center whistle, again, you don't need anyone when you use the top dead center whistle. You can just spin it over, and all you have to do is listen, watch your timing marks, and then look at the distributor's cap to see where it's pointing to, and then you know you've reached top dead center on the compression stroke for the number 1 cylinder. So if you've done everything correctly, guys, you are now ready to take your old distributor out. Go ahead and pull your old distributor out, and then we're going to move on to the next thing we need to discuss, okay? Before you can put your new distributor in, you're going to look down into the hole where you remove the old distributor from. You're going to look down in that hole, guys, and you are going to see a oil pump gear down in that hole, okay? And when the new distributor, or the old distributor rather, when it failed, that gear turned either like this or like that, but it's in the wrong position regardless. That oil pump gear needs to be just like this in the end, okay? So it needs to be up and down just like that, okay? So what you will find is a lot of people will take screwdrivers and whatever and stick down into that hole trying to spin that oil pump gear around. Whatever works for you is fine, but I'm going to show you a neat trick. So what you're going to do is get your old distributor, find these two dimples here, go to the back and the bottom, punch it out, guys. Once you punch it out, you can remove this gear, and now you have the perfect tool that will go down into that hole and spin that gear around correctly for you. So, take your old distributor. This is how it sits in there. Turn the head, doesn't matter which direction you turn it. What you want to do is watch the bottom, turn it around until it matches just how that gear is down there. So now you're ready to lower this down and engage that gear's head, and then you can spin that gear around. And you may have to do this part 2 or 3 times to get it right, but you're going to spin that gear around because now you want the gear to sit like so, okay? You don't want it like this, don't want it like that. You want it to sit just like this as your distributor sits in there. You want it to sit just like that, okay? So, bear with me for a moment while I put my little gadget back together. So, in the end, to be clear, we want the oil pump gear inside that hole, and get a bright flashlight, guys, whatever works for you. Get a bright flashlight, look down in that hole, okay? You want that gear to be up and down just like that. So, if you've successfully accomplished this part, what I want you to do next is get your new distributor, and I'm going to point out a couple of things on your new distributor. On your new distributor, remember it sits like this. There's a number 6 for V6 engines and a number 8 for V8 engines. On the bottom of your new distributor, there are 2 new dimples. Remember, this is my own handmade screw, but there are 2 dimples on the bottom of your distributor's gear, and then there's going to be a manufacturer's mark right in here where my thumb is, okay? Very important, pay attention to those. So you're going to then take the gear and spin the distributor's rotor around until it lands on the number 6. See that? Okay. Once you've done that, you can make a mark there if you want. The next thing you're going to do to get the distributor to seat correctly, you're going to spin these 2 dimples at the bottom around to line up with the manufacturer's mark. What you don't see at the top is when you spin this gear to line up those dimples with the manufacturer's mark, the distributor moved, okay? Once it moves and these dimples are lined up, go ahead and make another mark on the distributor itself, guys, okay? So what you've done is you've set the distributor to be ready to mate with the oil pump gear. So now that we've done my little 6, spun the dimples trick, look at the bottom of your gear, okay? Look at the position the gear is in. It matches how you set the oil pump. And again, get a bright flashlight, look down in that hole. You may have to do it 2 or 3 times to get it right, but you're going to get it right, okay? So now your distributor is ready to be lowered down into that oil pump gear, okay? It's ready to go down into that oil pump gear. So when you did this part here, the 6, lined the dimples up, made your little mark here, you can carefully lower the distributor down or try and get it back into its hole. It's a pain in the ass, guys, to try and get these distributors back in that tight spot, and sometimes you'll bump the gear against something. Try to grab the distributor like so you don't disturb the rotor. But don't worry about it, guys. If you bump the bottom gear and throw these two marks off by a hair or two, no sweat. Get the distributor in a position to be lowered into the hole. And if you bump the mark, just turn and match up your marks again. Remember, you won't be able to see the dimples down in that hole because it's way down in the hole. But if you line these two marks up, if you bumped it, then the dimples are set where they need to be set with the manufacturer's mark, okay? You can go ahead and lower the distributor. This gear will engage that gear, and if you've done everything correctly, when you lower it down into the hole, the distributor's rotor should automatically turn over and land on the number 6. If you've done all of this correctly, and sometimes you got to wiggle this a little bit where you may have to turn the crank pulley left and right just slightly to get this thing to engage. Okay, I never have to do that. When I do what I'm showing you today, it just spins right over and lands on the 6. So if you've done this correctly and it lands on the 6, you have perfectly timed your engine, your 4.3 liter vortec engine. Okay, you go ahead and start putting everything back together. Make sure you hook up the electrical connector, hold down bolt. And a lot of folks will ask me, if I get this wrong, will I destroy my engine? The answer is no, guys. This is just ignition timing. The worst thing that will happen if you don't get this right is your truck may not start up, or probably will not start up. Okay, especially if you can't get this thing to seat correctly. Okay, and you must make sure that it seats correctly and the pointer is at the number 6. So again, I'm going to make sure we are clear. Where'd you go? Running from me there. I'm going to make sure that we're perfectly clear to be at top dead center. Let's pretend the rotor is under there. It should be pointing at the number 1 position. For top dead center, your timing marks on the crank pulley should be lined up like I showed you, and then you can go ahead and remove your distributor. Now, for those of you who believe that this is 180 out because the number 1 spark plug wire is way over here, it just looks like it's 180 out. It's not really, because why? The number 1 firing goes all the way over here, and that's why it's over there, guys, okay, for the most part. So anyway, if you've done that correctly, go ahead and put everything back together. You should be able to start your vehicle up, and you should be good to go. So again, right quick, before you lower that distributor, new distributor into place, 6 for V6 engines, 8 for V8 engines, turn the dimples, or turn the rotor pointer to the number 6, okay? Then turn your dimples at the bottom for the manufacturer's mark. Your gear should be lined up, ready to receive by that oil pump gear, because you must do this part right in order to get this thing to seat correctly. So now that this is set, go up and look at where the rotor pointer is. When these dimples are lined up, make a mark for the pointer. You can go ahead and lower it in there. And again, you don't have to sweat if you accidentally bump this and throw it off a little bit. Get it in a position where it's ready to be lowered. Turn the mark back and match it up with the pointer. You can go ahead and lower the gear down into that oil pump gear. When they engage each other, the rotor should spin over and land on the 6. If this does not work for you guys, and you've done something wrong and you need to go back and start over, okay? That's the only thing I can tell you. If you have any questions, guys, you can go to Google. Google will have just as good of an answer for you sometimes as us video makers. When you go to remove your spark plug wire, don't grab the wire here and pull it. Grab it by the boot with needle nose pliers or a spark plug removal tool, okay? For those of you who are dealing with these nasty spider injectors, right quick, if you're removing spider injector inserts or your spider injector for whatever reason, don't grab the spider injectors here and pull. Get yourself a pair of curved needle nose pliers. Gently squeeze this part okay, gently. Put a little pressure on it, and then you can pull it up, and the insert should come out with it if it hasn't already broken off down in the engine cylinder, okay? So I just wanted to point that out to you. And then there's one more thing I wanted to point out to you right quick. For those of you that are ordering spider injectors for your vehicle, there are two types of spider injectors. Some vehicles have two fuel lines running in here. There is two fuel lines running in some engines, and some engines only have one fuel line running back here. If you have two fuel lines and you're ordering a new spider injector set, you want to order with a return line. If you only have one line back here, then you want to order without a return line. For those of you that have to order something without a return line, Rock Auto carries these for 160 something bucks and $100 core, as you know what they're going to do with the old piece. But anyway, just wanted to make that clear to you. So be careful when ordering these, because if you need to order for without a return line and you don't pay attention and order one with a return line and you hook this thing up, fuel is going to start spitting out of here. They won't accept it back, and you're just out of $350 or whatever it is you paid for it. Nope, you cannot fill this hole or cap it with anything, okay? You need to order the correct spider injector. So I hope that information has been helpful to you guys as well. Again, I'm trying to give as much information as I possibly can give to you. Whatever method you use, whether it's the screwdriver method, clothes hanger wire, tissue, or top dead center whistle method, which again I find to be the easiest because you don't need anyone to help you. Good luck, guys. Take your time. For those of you who are afraid and thinking that you're going to mess something up, you can't destroy the engine, guys. This is just ignition timing only. It's not the same as messing with your timing chain, because if you didn't get that part correctly and didn't line up your marks and you start the engine, you could potentially destroy your engine by bending the valves, okay? So I hope the video has been helpful to you guys. Thanks for watching, and I don't think I left anything out. Remember to disconnect that black cable from the battery whenever working on anything electrical. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you next time.